Good evening and welcome to the season finale of Vatican Connections. I'm Noel Okel. Yes, it's our last episode for the season, but despite that, there's still a lot of interesting headlines coming from the Vatican. So here are just some of the look at the stories we bring on tonight's season finale. The Pope embarked on his 28th International Apostolic voyage over the weekend, and we have some highlights on how it went. Changes have been made to canon law that now makes it easier for religious orders to expel members. And after the video of the Pope pulling his hand away went viral last week, the Vatican explains why the Pope isn't crazy about people kissing his ring. And this week in the history of the Vatican, it was 14 years ago on April the 2nd that the world witnessed the death of the first non-Italian Pope in 455 years. And I have all that and more coming up on Vatican Connections up next, so be sure to stay tuned. Okay, let's begin with a quick look at some of the papal events over the past week. And of course, the major event over the weekend was the Pope's 28th International Apostolic journey to Morocco. On Saturday, the Pope embarked on an ecumenical mission to strengthen relations with the Muslim world as a promoter of peace. He wished to symbolically embrace the whole Arab world from the east to the west as a sign of peace, of welcoming, and of hope. And over the past 2 days, he did just that. Vatican Media brings us some highlights of the first papal visit to Morocco in 33 years. Have a look. After a full day of official meetings and ceremonial greetings, the Pope ended the day with a visit to the local Caritas branch where he met with migrants. He spoke with men and women Muslims studying to be prayer leaders and also with migrants assisted by the Catholic charity that works with the most vulnerable of the estimated 80,000 migrants currently in Morocco. And CNS was there and brings us these images of that encounter. Now, before returning back to Rome on his last day, the Pope celebrated Mass with Morocco's small Catholic community. He praised them for the many ways they bear witness to the gospel of mercy in that land. I encourage you, he said, to continue to let the culture of mercy grow, a culture in which no one looks at another with indifference or averts his eyes in the face of their suffering. More than a dozen Muslim leaders attended the Mass as a sign of friendship and were given seats near the front of the arena. Have a look.
Continuate così, prossimi di coloro che sono spesso lasciati indietro, dei piccoli e dei poveri, dei prigionieri e dei migranti. Che la vostra carità si faccia sempre attiva e sia così una via di comunione tra i cristiani di tutte le confessioni presenti in Marocco, l'ecumenismo della carità. Che possa essere anche una via di dialogo e di cooperazione con i nostri fratelli e sorelle musulmani e con tutte le persone di buona volontà.
Now, before the Pope left for Morocco last week, he presided on Friday over the 6th annual 24 Hours for the Lord penitential celebration at St. Peter's Basilica. This annual celebration, which sees a church in every diocese around the world open for 24 consecutive hours for confession and adoration, is organized by the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization. Monsignor Krzysztof Markianowicz from the Pontifical Council spoke to Vatican News about how this initiative is being received around the world. And I have a portion of that interview for you now from Vatican News.
Pope Francis on Friday afternoon was presiding over the opening of the traditional 24 Hours for the Lord. The penitential celebration, which takes place in St. Peter's Basilica, has been organized by the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization. The theme for this year's is taken from the Gospel of John, "Neither do I condemn you." Monsignor Krzysztof Markianowicz is an official at the Pontifical Council. He spoke to Lydia O'Kane about the growth of the initiative over the last 6 years and the opportunity it gives to embrace God's mercy.
It's in its 6th year. What kind of feedback have you had from dioceses? Because it's not just here in Rome, it's dioceses around the world. In those 6 years, do you think people have embraced going to confession, taking this time during Lent to do these things? Has it helped?
Just coming back, and recalling that the first initiative, actually, we started this actually because people were asking for the moment of adoration and the moments of peace, of a common prayer with the Holy Father, and it started actually during the year of faith. And the feedback from this adoration gave us this input, to propose the 24 Hours for the Lord, which is basically, an initiative based on the adoration and confession. And every year I'm marveled by all those people who write to us, thanking for this initiative. Bishops, parish priests, lay people. It's all over the world. When you go on Google and you digit 24 Hours for the Lord, you will see another reality, that's simply something different, and parallel to, because, as you can see, it's a small group, this Pontifical Council, and it's like an avalanche, going all over the world already, which is beautiful, and that's something that gives us, also joy that there was a good proposal, and the Holy Father who actually said that to open the churches, and to be available for the people. That's a reply.
Now, the Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization has prepared a booklet in different languages to accompany those wishing to participate in their local 24 Hours for the Lord event, and it's available on the website listed below. The courage to encounter one another and extend a hand of friendship is a pathway of peace and harmony for humanity. Brothers and sisters, God calls us once again to conversion. Let us pray to obtain the grace of a new life in Christ the Lord. And from St. Peter's Square last Wednesday, the Pope greeted and blessed the crowds who came to see him during his weekly general audience. The Holy Father continued his reflection series on the prayer of the Our Father, but focused on the petition, "Give us this day our daily bread," which he said reminds us that we must pray for the needs of everyone, not just for our own. If it is not prayed in this way, the Pope said, the Our Father ceases to be a Christian prayer. The Pope also emphasizes that our daily bread means not just food, but also the necessities of life. He invited everyone to consider the prayer from that viewpoint of those who are in real need. How many mothers and how many fathers, he said, even today, go to sleep with the anguish of not having sufficient bread for their children for the next day. From this perspective, the Pope said, the words of Jesus take on a new meaning. And afterwards, the Pope presented the Pro Ecclesia et Pontifice cross to an elderly missionary nun who dedicated her life in delivering more than 3,000 babies in the Congo. The Holy Father presented the honor to 85-year-old daughter of St. Joseph, Sister Maria Conchetta Esu, saying that it's a sign of the Church's gratitude and affection for all the work that she's done amidst our African brothers and sisters in the service of life, of children, of mothers, and of families. Have a look.
Cara sorella, a nome mio e della Chiesa ti offro un'onorificenza e un segno del nostro affetto e del nostro grazie per tutto il lavoro che hai fatto in mezzo alle sorelle e ai fratelli africani al servizio della vita dei bambini, delle mamme e delle famiglie. Cara sorella,
Now, 5 months after the Synod of Bishops that focused on young people, faith, and vocational discernment ended last October, the final concluding document called Christus Vivat was released today at a press conference at the Vatican. In the document, the Pope talked about how the sex abuse crisis, a history of sexism, and a narrow focus on just a handful of moral issues can keep young people away from the Church. And after the press conference, we had a chance to talk to Monsignor Fabio Fabine, the Undersecretary for the General Secretariat of the Synod of Bishops, about his initial thoughts on the document itself and if it's possible to see the outcome of the Synod just after such a short period of time. And this is what he had to say.
Monsignor Fabene, grazie per essere qui con noi. Siamo a margine di questa conferenza che ha presentato l'esortazione apostolica che inizia in una maniera molto chiara. Praticamente quello che tocca Gesù è giovane.
Ma questo è indubbio, è proprio della fede, perché Gesù è il vivente, è veramente quello che lui raggiunge con la sua presenza, con il suo amore, con la sua grazia, ringiovanisce. Perché? Perché Gesù ci toglie il male, ci toglie il peccato, ci toglie tutto l'invecchiamento che è in noi e ci ridona la forza proprio della giovinezza, del bello, del vero e del buono che è dentro di noi. Gesù è capace di Gesù crea in noi l'uomo nuovo, togliendoci quell'uomo vecchio che appartiene al peccato.
Le chiedo, a distanza di 5 mesi dalla fine del Sinodo, sappiamo che i risultati del Sinodo si vedono dopo tempo, però è già possibile tracciare qualcosa, lei anche come esperienza diretta, i frutti reali di questo Sinodo sui giovani?
Innanzitutto c'è stata da parte di tante comunità, delle diocesi, delle parrocchie, dei centri pastorali, una rinnovata consapevolezza dell'importanza della presenza dei giovani. Come qui scrive il Papa nella esortazione apostolica, i giovani ringiovaniscono la Chiesa, ridanno forza e capacità alla Chiesa, e questo noi lo dobbiamo pensare non soltanto a livello teorico, ma la Chiesa è una realtà viva, il popolo di Dio, è la comunità che i giovani vivono e incontrano innanzitutto nelle loro parrocchie. È lì che i giovani devono essere presenti per poter ringiovanire quella loro comunità, e da lì poi nasce il ringiovanimento di tutta la Chiesa, di tutto il popolo di Dio. Quindi credo che il primo frutto del Sinodo è stata proprio questa rinnovata consapevolezza della presenza e della missione che i giovani devono avere nelle loro comunità, e proprio adesso con la pubblicazione di questa esortazione apostolica credo ci sarà il frutto più bello del Sinodo, perché questa esortazione è ricca veramente di tanti spunti, a iniziare dal rapporto personale che i giovani devono avere con Gesù, e poi tutto per quello che riguarda una rinnovata pastorale giovanile che il Papa chiama sinodale e popolare nello stesso tempo. Quindi aspettiamo che i frutti del Sinodo germoglieranno sicuramente con questa esortazione apostolica.
Some changes to the Code of Canon Law was made last week by the Pope that makes it easier for religious orders to expel members from its religious community. In a document titled Communis Vita, or in English, Community Life, the Pope amended the Code of Canon Law, Canon 694, to include an almost automatic expulsion of a religious from a congregation who has been absent without authorization from their community for at least 12 months and is unreachable. Prior to this change, the canon originally had only two provisions for expulsion of an individual from their order. First, that the person has notoriously and publicly abandoned the Catholic faith, and second, that the person has entered into a marriage or even attempted to marry. In such cases, the superior and the council of the order must draw up a declaration of the facts and have it submitted to the Holy See for institutes for pontifical right, or to the local bishops for submission to the institutes of diocesan rights. These changes now give legal clarity to a religious order and allows them to avoid unpleasant surprises, such as when a member behaves in a manner contrary to that of a religious person, or problems derived from economic implications that could harm the order. The changes to this canon will go into effect on April the 10th of this year and is not retroactive in cases of prior to that date. Okay, now here's an interesting story. You may have seen by now the viral video that went up on the internet last week of the Pope pulling his hand away from people coming up to kiss his ring in a rather uncharacteristically brisk manner. The short video of the Pope pulling his right hand away, preventing people from kissing his ring during his trip to Loreto on March 25th, caught many people by surprise and garnered international media attention. The interim Vatican spokesperson, Alessandro Gisotti, responded to the questions on Thursday in regards to why the Pope prevented people from kissing his ring. And according to Gisotti, the Pope did this for purely hygienic reasons, because there was a very long lineup of people and he wanted to avoid the spreading of germs. Gisotti said that he had asked the Pope earlier about it that day, and the Pope explained that he didn't want to spread any germs to a large number of people in line. And while the Pope wanted to avoid getting other people sick, it's not a priority for himself, Gisotti said. The Pope still prefers to embrace people and to be embraced by people, and would rather avoid what seems aristocratic. Instead of the formal ring kissing, this Pope much prefers the warm embraces or the holding of a person's two hands like two old friends would. Now, what the short viral video clip didn't show was the other 30 minutes of the Pope greeting others in line with his usual warm style evident throughout his pontificate, and his preference for the affectionate face-to-face and heart-to-heart human contact. Now, another major headline that made international news last week was the release of the new legislation and guidelines that the Pope issued for the protection of minors. 3 new documents were released on Friday concerning the protection of minors and vulnerable persons that set new guidelines for the Vatican, city-state, and the Roman Curia. It calls on church authorities to listen immediately to people who say they are victims and to report immediately any credible allegations to prosecutors. Those who fail to comply could be subject to financial penalties and/or jail time. In the apostolic letter that introduces the new legislation, the Pope wrote, "I wish, therefore, to further strengthen the institutional and normative order to prevent and fight abuses against minors and vulnerable adults. The laws and regulations have been created so that in the Roman Curia and in the Vatican City-State, there will be, among other things, respect and awareness of the rights and needs of minors and vulnerable adults, greater vigilance, prevention and corrective action when abuse or mistreatment is suspected or reported, clearer procedures as well as specific offices for making claims, support services and protection for alleged victims, their families, and those accused, and also background checks for new personnel, including volunteers." Now, the new set of laws actually enhances a set of criminal laws that the Pope had approved in 2013, laws that deal with child sex abuse, child pornography, and the sale of or prostitution of children. It specifies that any Vatican employee around the world can be tried by the Vatican court for violating those laws. The new laws will now cover all forms of physical and emotional abuse, including serious forms of mistreatment, neglect, abandonment, and exploitation against minors who are below the age of 18, including vulnerable adults. The law covers acts, behaviors, or conditions that are allegedly perpetrated by any public official, which includes all employees of Vatican City-State, the Holy See, members of the Roman Curia and related institutions, and all Vatican diplomats and personnel. And as long as they are not breaking the seal of confession, all public officials are required to report without delay to the prompter of the Justice of the Vatican City-States Tribunal any abuse that they learn about while operating as a Vatican official or employee. Failure or wrongful delay can result in a fine of up to 5,000 euros or up to 6 months imprisonment. If the suspected predator is a priest or is a member of a religious community, his or her superior will be immediately notified so that new procedures prescribed by canon law can begin. Now, proving yet again that mercy is the cornerstone of his pontificate, the Pope has also provided for those found guilty. In his opening letter, he wrote that those convicted of abuse against minors or vulnerable people should be removed from their responsibilities and, at the time, given adequate support for psychological and spiritual rehabilitation, also with the goal of social reintegration. Now, if you'd like all the complete details on the new laws and guidelines, including the complete text from the Pope's introductory letter, you can visit the website listed below. And finally tonight, we go back in time and look at one major historical event that happened this week at the Vatican. Now, it was exactly 14 years ago on April the 2nd that the world witnessed the death of the first non-Italian pope in 455 years. On April the 2nd, 2005, Pope John Paul II, born in Poland in 1920 as Karl Wojtyła, died in Rome at the age of 84. He was elevated in 1978 to the seat of Peter as the first non-Italian pope since Pope Adrian VI from the Netherlands in 1522, almost 455 years before. He held the second longest reign, almost 27 years after Pope Pius IX, who had served for 31 years, and he traveled extensively, visiting 129 countries during his pontificate. At the age of 58, he was the youngest individual to start his papacy since Pius VIII, who was 54 upon his election in 1846. His funeral was held 6 days after his death on April 8, 2005, and brought together, at the time, the single largest gathering of heads of states outside the United Nations, even surpassing the 1965 funeral of Winston Churchill. It was the Dean of the College of Cardinals, then Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, who presided over the funeral mass. The normally stern prelate was choked with emotion as he recalled John Paul's appearance at the window of his apartment only 12 days ago on Easter Sunday when he blessed the faithful at the square below. 4 kings, 5 queens, and at least 70 presidents and prime ministers and more than 14 leaders of other religions attended, alongside the hundreds of thousands that packed St. Peter's Square in what was estimated to be the single largest gathering of Christianity in history, with numbers in excess of 4 million mourners gathering in Rome alone. And as the coffin was carried inside the basilica for immediate burial inside the papal crypt, the bells of St. Peter rang out as a final farewell for a pope with whom many Catholics disagreed, but who was adored nevertheless by all. And the next time the bells of St. Peter's rang was for the announcement that the cardinals had chosen a successor to that much-loved pope, who we all know as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, on April the 19th, 2005. And that's our show to end the season, but don't worry, starting this Friday, we bring you World Scene from the Vatican, which will begin to air this Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern here on Salt and Light Television. I'm Noel Okel. Thank you for joining us.